everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here today to talk about the trial of Amber Guyger. If you guys remember, last September, it was September 6th of 2018, Amber Guyger is a white Dallas police officer who parked her car on the wrong floor of her apartment complex and then entered an apartment that she believed was hers, and she shot and killed the resident of that apartment, who was a black guy by the name of Botham John. And when the case went before the grand jury, they upped it and charged her with murder one. And so I learned that in Texas, murder one isn't like murder one in Florida. So I guess each state has their own stipulations of what quantifies a certain charge. And so in Florida, if you're charged with murder in the first degree, you're like facing the death penalty or life in prison. And it has to be proven that it was premeditated, that when you killed the person, you had already planned it out, charted it out, and you knew that once you confronted the person that you were going to kill them. Whereas with the murder one charge in Dallas, they don't have that high of a threshold. You just have to prove that it was reasonable, that your actions, the jury has to believe that it was reasonable to think that when you confronted this person or was in this situation, that you knew it could lead to a murder. So you had the opportunity to retreat, but you chose not to.
Let the Spirit of the Lord rise among us. Let the Spirit of the Lord and let it rise. You gotta let the Spirit of the Lord and let it rise.
And so at first, I don't think they were going to charge Amber, but then after, protests and rallies and everything took place, they charged her with manslaughter. So Amber Guyger is actually facing two possibilities. One is murder one, and the other is manslaughter. And the trial began on Monday, I believe it was, and today is probably going to wrap up. They're getting ready for closing arguments. They may have a couple of more witnesses to come up, but I believe that the trial will wrap up today, and then we'll probably have a verdict probably tomorrow or Monday, or maybe even later today, depending on how the jury feels. So the jury makeup is quite interesting, and people were saying that it actually reflects the diversity of Dallas County, because all of this happened, you guys know, in Texas, in Dallas, Texas. And so it says that there are 5 black jurors, 5 Hispanic / Asian, 2 white, and then they have 4 alternates, and the alternates are 2 black people and 2 white people. And I believe that all the alternates may be women, and they didn't really say what the 5 black jurors were that are actually going to hear the case and make the decision. And so, like, although the alternates are present, unless something happens to one of the regular juries, they don't get to decide Amber's fate. So a lot of things that are important to look at in the beginning is the fact that Amber Guyger changed her story several times, immediately following the shooting. one point she said that the door was locked, then she said that the door was unlocked, then she said that the door wasn't closed all the way. And so when she put her, they have these fob keys, and they're not like regular keys, but they are these little, and I'll see if I have a picture that I can drop in here. And actually, I'm going to drop a video with a demonstration of how the key works, and so you'll see what the key looks like. But basically, you stick it into the lock. If it's your door, then the light will turn green and you can turn it and unlock the door. If it's not your key or the key is malfunctioning, then the light is red. And so when Amber Guyger stuck her key fob into the lock, it should have turned red. But according to her during the trial, she's saying that when she stuck the key in, that the door just pushed open. But when you look at this video that I'm going to drop here, you'll see that the door is really heavy, and I don't think it would have pushed open that easy, but she's saying that it just pushed open.
This is my key. This is my fob. I turn it. I open. Let me see if my door stays ajar. Nope. Lies.
Then there were also discrepancies in the timeline from when she says that she opened the door and went in to what witnesses are saying they heard, the times that they heard the gunshots that took place. And so there's a discrepancy there. And then the other thing that came up is that she said, oh, and then she also claimed that she yelled out when she opened the door, she yelled out, "Show me your hands, show me your hands." But the witnesses say that they didn't hear that, and that they only heard the gunshots. And so this was important because the way the apartments are set up, the people that testified said that if you live next door to somebody, the walls were pretty soundproof. You couldn't hear what was going on in the apartments next door to you. However, you could hear everything that was going on in the hallways. And so they're saying that if she had actually yelled, show me your hands or let me see your hands, that they would have heard her because it would have echoed through the hallway. And she claimed that she didn't go all the way into the apartment, that she was standing in the doorway. And even during the testimony, she talks about standing on that silver, the door strip that's beneath most of our doors. She recalls standing on that when she shot him. So she would have basically been almost in the hallway. So if she was yelling, let me see your hands, then the neighbors would have heard that. And if she was saying it as loud as she claims that she said it, then the neighbors definitely would have heard that. So a couple of discrepancies, and then once we make it to trial, then we learn a whole lot more discrepancies from Amber Guyger. But before I get into what happened with the case, let me read you guys a little bit about Botham John so you guys can get a feel about who he was. And so this information comes from the Botham John Foundation.org website. After he died, there was a foundation that was set up on his behalf. And so I'm going to read you about him, and then I'll tell you about the foundation. So his name was Botham, Botham, Shem, Shem, Jean, Jean. And so he was a 26-year-old St. Lucian who graduated from Harding University and became a risk assurance associate with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And from a very young age, Botham has been a faithful member of the Church of Christ and devoted his life to helping people who were less fortunate than him. On September 6, 2018, Botham's life was cut short when he was shot and killed by a Dallas police officer whose claim was she mistakenly entered his apartment believing it to be hers. During Botham's short life, he was active in community outreach in his native country of St. Lucia. These actions included St. Lucia Boys Training Center, the New Beginnings Transit Home, Marion Home for the Elderly, and Gross Islet Community Outreach. Other institutions of which Botham exhibited passion and yearned to assist were the Gross Islet infant school, and the Church of Christ in St. Lucia. Therefore, in keeping with what Botham started and his love for missionary work, this foundation is established to continue his sterling work and live his legacy. In addition, the foundation will be providing support to families impacted by police brutality due to the manner in which Botham's life was cut short, as well as work alongside programs geared towards assisting immigrants with the challenges faced during their transition. And so they talk a little bit about the foundation throughout the trial and how the community is basically taking groups of boys over to St. Lucia to volunteer, to just continue the work that Botham was doing, the volunteer work that he was doing. And so just very positive person. He sang in his church choir, was a very good singer. There's video of him singing in the choir, and I'll drop a little clip in here.
Are you gonna let the praises of our kingdom let it rise? Come on, let it rise. I'm singing, whoa, 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 let it rise, let it rise.
And just really sad all the way around, like sad that you're in your house. You could be sitting in your house and a police officer can come in your house and kill you and then think that it's okay by saying, oops, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And so, in watching the trial, I don't see it really rising to the level of the murder one definition, but I definitely see her being found guilty of manslaughter. And I don't know, it was just crazy. And then the testimony throughout the trial. So they just brought in all these people that lived in the apartment complex at the time that the shooting took place. And I was just truly amazed by the number of people that said, yeah, I parked on the wrong floor before. Yes, I've gone into the building on the wrong floor and actually tried to stick my key in the apartment that would have been my apartment if I had been on the right floor. And this made absolutely no sense to me, because I'm thinking, if you have the wherewithal to know, like if I live in the 5th apartment on the right side, if I got the wherewithal to know that I'm at the 5th apartment on the right side, then I have the wherewithal to know that, you know what? This building don't look, this floor doesn't look like my floor. Like there's going to be certain things about that floor. And I will admit that I used to live in this apartment complex. And so there were about 24 apartments in the building. It was 2-story. But every 4 apartments had a entry door that led into your hallway. And then they had the stairs. And so there were 2 doors at the back, 2 doors at the top. And so I lived at the door on the right side on the bottom, and the stairwell was like in front of my door. And so there was one time that I did go in. I had came home from the club and something, probably had been drinking. I did go in through that door, the wrong door. Like I was in the middle door, like the 3rd door. I went into the 4th door because all the parking spaces was gone, and I usually park right in front of my door. And so the parking space that was open was right in front of the door, but it was the 4th door. And so I got out the car and I went inside, and as soon as I opened that door, I knew I had opened the wrong door. I didn't even make it to the door that I thought would have been mine, and the reason I knew I had went into the wrong door was because of the floor mats and because of the decorations and everything that people had on their doors. I think at the time I may have had like a wreath or something around my door, and people had just different things on their doors, personalizing their living space. But I have never like went into a building thinking, oh, I live in this building, and then actually stuck my key into somebody else's door, because I just think you're aware of where you are. There's things about you. And for people to walk to the actual door that would have been their door if they were on the other floor, and just not take in anything around them is just crazy to me. And then it just got me to thinking, and I posted on Twitter, I was like, people who, first of all, drive up an extra floor from the floor that they were supposed to be on, then not see the number on the door, go into the wrong building, and then go to an apartment and stick their key in the wrong door, are the same people that leave their kids in hot, sweaty cars to die. They're the same people who walk into traffic. They're so busy texting that they don't realize that, the light, they don't have the walk, and then they walk into the traffic and get killed texting on their phones. And they're the same people that when it's raining, they drive into lakes. Because I can remember I used to work for the city, and I had to go in during a tropical storm, and to get to work I had to go over what's called the Howard Franklin Bridge. And so it was early in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving. And so, it's just rain coming down. Tampa Bay is rising. And then all of a sudden, the traffic kind of like, I knew the traffic was turning, but then I started to turn with the traffic. And then I caught myself and it was like, there's no curve. And so I braked, because now I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's an accident ahead. But do you know what was happening? A car drove off the road into Tampa Bay. The next car drove off the road into Tampa Bay. And then, and actually it wasn't the cars first, it was a semi. The semi drove off the road into Tampa Bay, and then the two cars that were behind it, and then I was the third car, they followed the semi. Okay, but as I was about to follow them, I realized there's no curve here. I got to keep straight. And then I was thinking, I slowed down to see, was there an accident? And there was no accident, but they were playing follow the leader. Okay, and so just word of caution, be mindful of where you are, be mindful of what you're doing, where you're going at all times. So, as I said before, there were different stories that came out about how Amber Guyger actually got into the apartment. So the one story was that she tried to get into the apartment, but the door was locked, and that she shot Botham John when he opened the door for her, which we now know was a lie because of where the body was positioned during the trial. Then the second story was that she got into Botham John's apartment because the door was unlocked. She saw a figure in the darkness and fired her weapon. And then the third story was the one that she told during the trial, where she says that the door was slightly ajar, so it opened when she pushed in her key, and she saw a figure in the darkness and shot. So when the arrest affidavit was released, Texas Ranger David Armstrong, it was really weird with him because the prosecution first brought him up during the trial, but the judge said that he wouldn't be allowed to testify because they were trying to bring him up as an expert witness, and that he was not an expert. And it was a good thing that she didn't allow him to come up for the prosecution, because he basically said that he felt that it was reasonable that she killed the man, that he thought it was reasonable that, when she opened the door, she felt threatened, and that she had every right under her police training to shoot him. And so I was like, well, why was the prosecution trying to bring him up? Well, then yesterday, he had to come back up again, because now the defense wants to call him as a witness. And then the judge did allow him to be a witness for the defense, but he's very limited on what it is that he's going to be able to say. And I had to run out yesterday, but it was pretty late, so I'm not sure that he even testified yesterday. He may be the first person to testify today. He wrote in his report that Amber Guyger returned home from her shift and accidentally parked her car on the 4th floor instead of the 3rd floor where she lives, and then she entered the complex and walked to John's apartment, which she believed to be her own. So John's door was slightly ajar, so when she pushed in her key, it opened and she saw a large silhouette and thought she had encountered a burglar. Armstrong wrote, so she took out her firearm and allegedly gave verbal commands that were ignored. As a result, Guyger fired her handgun 2 times. Guyger then entered the apartment, turned on the lights, and called 911. It was only when the dispatcher asked for the address that she looked to the door and realized that she was in the wrong apartment, according to the report. But during the testimony, her story changes from what that says there. Then witnesses told the family that they heard knocking before shooting and Guyger saying, "Let me in, let me in." So following the release of the arrest affidavit, John's family held a press conference in which they disputed the official timeline. Attorney Lee Merritt, who is representing the family, said they are skeptical that John would have left the door to his apartment ajar, saying the PricewaterhouseCoopers worker was a meticulous person who makes it a point to close the door behind him. A resident in the building shared a video with civil rights activist Sean King showing how the building's key system works and how it would be almost impossible for a front door to stay ajar. And that's the video that I showed you guys a few minutes ago. And Merritt says that 2 women who lived in the building have also come to them giving details that contradict the affidavit. So Merritt also said that before the shooting, the women heard knocking followed by a woman's voice saying, "Let me in, let me in." Then they heard gunshots followed by a man's voice saying, "Oh my God, why did you do that?" One of the women also took a video after the shooting which shows what appears to be Guyger pacing outside the apartment as emergency responders arrive. The woman went to the Jean family first with that story, not the police. And then Fox 4 News reported that investigators were set to interview the women who are said to be sisters. And then Benjamin Crump, you guys know him, he's like the attorney that's always on the scene in like the police shootings of unarmed black men. And another family lawyer said the women are, quote, independent witnesses who don't have a dog in this fight. Okay, so now we get to the trial, which started this week, and you can check it out. It was live. It was airing live on Court TV, and then there's also a website, Law and Crime. If you don't get that on your cable station, they're also airing it. I watch Court TV because that used to be my show back in the day, and they went off the air, and then earlier this year they came back on, but they're not on my cable provider, but you may get them on your television. But anyway, you can watch the trial, you can watch the replays. I like their commentary. They bring in different people to talk about the trial throughout the day. And so a lot of the witnesses were residents of the apartment complex. I was really curious because it doesn't seem like they have longevity with their tenants at this apartment complex. And then I guess after Amber Guyger went in and killed Botham John, they probably lost a lot of tenants because people didn't feel safe. And so, as I was saying before, there seemed to have been a lot of people going to the wrong apartments. They surveyed like 297 of the residents, and they came back and said 15. One time they said 15%, another time they said 19%. But somewhere between 15 and 19% of the people that were surveyed said that they have parked on the wrong floor. And then of that group of people who said that they have parked on the wrong floor, 23% of them said that they've actually went into the building and tried their key in the wrong door. Crazy, I know. Okay, and so I guess when you look at these buildings, they are very similar. They were saying that All the layouts are the same on every floor. All the walls were the same color. The doors were the same color. And the way that people differentiated their apartment from their neighbors were that they would put like mats in front of their doors. They would have, one lady had like this really tall vase that had some ferns sticking out of it. I don't know if you go to the Home Depot, not Home Depot, but like Joann Fabrics or the Home Decor stores, and there's like these sticks, and then the sticks have like these little flowery things on them. And I mean, it's artificial. I don't know if hers is real or not, but that is what was in her vase sitting outside her door. So she knew she was on the right floor. They talked about one floor had a planter, the other floor didn't have a planter. But after this survey was done and we realized that people just aren't paying attention, the apartment complex has since gone in and painted each floor a different color. And they've added, so before when you get on the elevator, and I've seen this before, like you get on the elevator, but right before you get on the elevator on the side, there's like a little square with the number of the floor that you're on. So that was what identified the floor, was those numbers on the side, and then there might have been like a small number outside the elevator. So now they have gone in and put real big signs for the dumb people that live in their apartment complex. And the signs are white, the letters are red, let them know you are on the wrong floor, or this is the floor that you're supposed to be in. And I think there was a gate to get into the parking garage, and then it was just like a regular parking garage. And I just, try to put myself in that frame of mind, and I'm thinking about when I used to work for the parking division, and we would go into the garage. Like, I knew if I went into the garage and turned right and went down, that's where city vehicles and the people that worked in the office, that's where their parking was at. If I went up, it just seems like you're counting as you're going up. And I know when I go to the movie theater at the downtown Sundial, at the downtown movie theater, you have to park in a garage, and nobody wants to go to the top of the garage. And so it's like once you go around, by the time you go around and you're approaching the third floor, you're like, dang, I don't want to go to the sixth floor or to the seventh floor. Like, I want a parking space, no more than the second or third. And so you just have this awareness, like, okay, I done went around one time, I'm on the second floor, and I went around two times, I'm now on the third floor. But none of these people seem to have that going on for them. And then one of the people that testified also said that when he went up to the fourth floor by mistake, he knew he was on the fourth floor because the building was only 4 stories high, and he saw the roof, I guess part of the roof, was open, so you could see like the city skyline, and plus I guess there was a part of the roof that overhangs or something. But he said that he saw the roof, he knew that he was on the wrong floor and he had missed where he was supposed to be. And so they give the timeline for the shooting. And before we get to that, so what we learned about Amber Guyger, okay, is that Amber was having an affair with her partner. His name was Martin Rivera. And we learned that she had worked a 13-hour shift that day or 15-hour shift that day, and that Martin Rivera had left early because he needed to take his kids to their soccer practice or something. And so she stayed. She gets off from work, but as she gets off from work, she's texting him. She's sending him some sexually explicit pictures on her phone. When she gets to the apartment and she parks, she's actually sitting there talking to him on the phone. And they said that, from her phone records, that normally when her and Martin Rivera talked on the phone, they only talked for like a minute or two. They were very short conversations. But on the night that she killed Botham John, their conversation lasted like 13 to 16 minutes. And so that was a red flag, because there was like, what was going on in that conversation that may have upset her and made her, distract her, and for her not to realize that she had gone to the wrong floor and that she was entering the wrong floor, and that was she so distracted by what was going on that it changed her mood and it made her angry or upset or more aggressive, that she wasn't thinking clearly when she got to the door and opened it and opened fire on this person. It also came out that the apartment complex has sent an email out to all the tenants letting them know that between September 4th and September 7th, they were going to be doing apartment inspections. And so be mindful, that the maintenance people were going to be coming through. And if you weren't home, they were going to enter the apartment, and that these inspections would be taking place all day long that week of the 4th. Well, Amber Guyger put in for September 7th, which I believe would have been that Friday. She put in for that day off, and so they asked her, why was she putting in for that day? Did she have something to do? And according to her, she put in for that day off because they were doing these inspections and she wanted to be home because she had a puppy or something. And then at another point, it seemed like she said she took the puppy to the mother's house. I don't know. It was like, it was strange. Maybe she took the puppy to the mother house earlier in the week. The people never came, so then she wanted that Friday off because that was the last day. Maybe that was her thinking. But nevertheless, the apartment, she said that they were going to come on the 7th between the hours of 8 and 5. Well, when the prosecution read the email from the apartment complex, they didn't give a time. They said that it was all day long, that at any time they could come in and do this inspection, and to wrap up these inspections, it could be all day long, the time frame for when they were going to come in. And so they kind of caught her in a lie, because they were like, how can you say it was 8 to 5 when nowhere on this email does it say that they were coming 8 to 5 or on any specific date? And then the other point that they were making by bringing that up is that it could have been a maintenance person in her apartment, since it didn't say we're going to cut off at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It very well could have been a maintenance person in her apartment, that she shot and killed. So it was unreasonable for her, knowing that they were doing these inspections. Her apartment had not been inspected yet, so it was unreasonable for her to jump to the conclusion that Botham John was a burglar in the apartment. And so there was a discrepancy in the timeline, and I'm going to post here the timeline, but I'm going to read to you guys what some of the timeline was leading up to him being shot. So when they were given the timeline, it starts at 7:23 that day, and it talks about her leaving the apartment, things that she did throughout the day. She testified that she was a part of some SWAT, was it the SWAT team or the FBI? They were helping somebody who needed to go and arrest somebody who was held up in a building or something. And so it just goes through her day and all the things that she did. Her regular shift was 8 to 4. The week of September 1st, I think they started with the 1st. They said that she was off the 1st and the 2nd. On the 3rd and 4th, she worked her regular 8-hour shift or 8 to 4 shift. And then on the 5th and 6th, one day she worked 13 hours. The other day she worked 15 hours. But then they also point out the fact that even though her set shift is 8 to 4, police officers don't work 8 to 4. They still have to do their reports and all of that stuff when they get back to the police station. So it's not inconceivable that a regular workday would have been 10 to 12 hours, but she ended up working these extra hours because they were short staffed and they needed people to do different things. But even though she worked these extra hours on the day of the 6th of the shooting, she actually talks about being at the police station. She talks about going to get pizza with some of the people that she worked for. So it's not like they were out there on the street fighting crime or anything where she would have been so stressed out. And then she also talked about the fact that on most nights she works out. So even though, regardless of the time that she gets home, she works out every day to relieve the stress of the day, and that she normally doesn't get into bed until 12 o'clock, and then she talks about, midnight or 12:30. She's usually up at 5:30. She goes to walk her dog. She then gets ready and leaves for work at about 7:30. And she says that some nights she has trouble sleeping, so it may take her 2 or 3 hours to get to sleep. But keep in mind, this is her normal pattern, so her body has adjusted to how she works. And then she says on Saturdays when she's off, so she works Monday through Friday, she's off on the weekends, and then she says on Saturday she usually sleeps in, and that's how she catches up on her sleep. But we know that you can't catch up on missed sleep. Once you miss sleep, that sleep is gone. But she sleeps in on Saturdays to rejuvenate herself and, to get herself back into form to get ready for work the next week. It goes through the timeline of, what all she did that day. And it goes through Botham John's timeline as well, for what he did. It says at 5:55 to 6:12, Amber Guyger and Martin Rivera, who's the lover, the married lover, I may say, they send multiple text messages and MMS to each other. And then 7:59 to 8:14, it says that Amber Guyger and Martin Rivera send multiple texts. They're still texting. So even though she was at work, she was still texting, okay? So she wasn't doing no work. She wasn't stressed out. She was, sending nasty messages and pictures to her boyfriend. 7:39 to 9:03, Amber Guyger is still at the precinct where she works. Then on the next shot, it says, so 9:27 to 9:33, Amber Guyger and Martin Rivera send multiple texts, MMS, and Snapchats to each other. 9:29, Amber Guyger sends Snapchat response, want to touch, asking him if he will touch her body. 9:33, Amber Guyger sends another text saying barely walking out, talking about leaving work. 9:27:59, they say that Botham John is on camera arriving at Southside Flats. 9:28:18, Botham John on camera entering garage at Southside Flats. 9:34 p.m., Botham John is entering his apartment. And then 9:38 to 9:55, Amber Guyger receives a call from Martin Rivera again, who is, the lover that we now know. 9:44, Amber Guyger is on camera arriving at Southside Flats. 9:46, Amber Guyger on camera entering garage gate at Southside Flats. So, and that's where her information cuts off. Oh, actually, it's on 9:38 to 9:55. Amber Guyger receives a call from Martin Rivera, and they talk on the phone. And this is that extended phone call that they point out, saying that in the past they've never talked on the phone that much before. From 9:59 to 10:04, Amber Guyger is on the phone with 911. And so we don't know. So between the 9:55 and the 9:59, they said it was 3 minutes and 40 seconds that's unaccounted for. So she enters the building. She shoots Botham John, does something. All this happens in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And then everything picks up at 9:59. She's on the phone with with 911. So 9:59 to 10:04, she's on the phone with 911. However, at 10:02, in the middle of the 911 call, Amber Guyger texts Martin Rivera saying, "I need you, hurry up." And this was interesting because during her testimony, she stated that Martin Rivera had never been to her apartment before, didn't know where the Southside Flats was at. However, in this text message, she's saying, "I need you, hurry up." But she never asked him, she never gives him the address, and he never texts her back and say, "What's the address, how I get there?" So we know she lied about that. So then at 10:03 is Amber Guyger, she texts Martin Rivera again and said, "I up," or something like that. I believe she was trying to say "I effed up," but she left out the F word. 10:02, it says that Dallas Police Department Officer Michael Lee, first responding officer on the scene. 10:04, Amber Guyger, Blair, and Lee enter apartment. So there was another police officer that arrived. 10:05, Amber Guyger leaves the apartment. 10:05:26, Lee and Blair start CPR on Botham John. And at 10:10, Dallas Fire Rescue arrive. At 10:12:03, they leave the apartment with Botham John's body. And all of this time, Amber Guyger is down in the parking lot because now there's not parking lot, but the garage, because now other police officers have arrived. And so they have video footage from the police officer's car cam where she's standing there with 4 or 5 other police officers, and they just yakking it up, talking, I guess helping her get her story straight. And the police officer whose car it is comes and gets her and basically tells her she shouldn't be talking to these other police officers because this is an active crime scene. And so she takes her over and tells her to get into her police car. And so Amber Guyger asked her, to something about should she stay in the car, should she turn off the camera. And so the lady tells her, yes, stay in the car, but don't say anything because we have to keep the camera running. And so she gets out the car. Amber Guyger gets out the car again, but then she hurry ups and get back in the car. And then as she's closing the door, you can see the fire rescue bringing the gurney across that has Botham John on the gurney. And so she's texting again. Like, she doesn't look over. She doesn't seem upset. She doesn't, like, no emotion whatsoever. And that was one of the other things that's going to be really hard for her because she showed no remorse, no emotion whatsoever throughout this whole ordeal. And so, like I said, you see him going by and she's in the car texting. At 10:16, it says that Sergeant Valentine's in-car camera shows her moving the squad car under the carport at Southside Flats. And that's pretty much where the timeline ends. So things that Amber Guyger did that was like so crazy. So according to her, she says she gets out the car, she grabs all of her stuff. So she had a bag for her food that had her lunch in it, a little lunch box. The new ones that they have, not the hard ones. Then she had her vest, and she called it a heavy vest. And this is like the bulletproof vest. And she says that it weighed like 30 pounds. And then she had this really big book bag that seemed to have been packed with like first aid kits and other stuff that police officers would use. So she said that she grabbed all of these items and she walked to Botham, to the wrong door, the door she thought was hers. And she said she stuck the key in, and when she stuck the key in, the door came open. But as she arrived at the door and was getting ready to put the key in, she claimed she heard somebody in the apartment. She heard shuffling around. And so this is what her verdict is going to rest on. Did she have a duty, since she was still in police uniform, still should have been in the state of mind of a police officer, using her police training, should she have retreated, call for backups, call 911 or call a partner or somebody and say, there's somebody in my apartment. She did not do that. She heard the shuffling. She said that she continued to open the door so that she could assess the situation, and that when she saw the subject, it was her intention to shoot that person and kill that person. And so no reasonable person, I don't think, would have done that. Like, if you arrive at your house and you think that there's somebody in your house, you're not going to go in the house to confront the person. You're going to go get back in the car, call the police or something. I think the only reason somebody would go into a house knowing that there's an intruder in there is if they have family members in there, they have loved ones in there, and maybe their adrenaline is like, I gotta go save my child. But if you live alone and you know somebody's in your apartment that shouldn't be in your apartment, I would think you're going to go and call 911. And then keep in mind that maintenance was doing these checks on the apartments. So that should have clicked in her mind. And maybe she would have opened the door and said, hello, hello, thinking that it was the maintenance people in there. But no, she drew her weapon and she shot. So the medical people that came in, the experts that came in to talk about the crime scene, according to them, Botham John was either sitting on his sofa or he was sitting on the sofa. The door started to open and he began to stand up because he was shot in the heart, and the bullet traveled downward. Okay. Amber Guyger is like 5'3" or maybe shorter than that. Botham John was much taller than her. I think they said he was 6 foot or 6'2". So we got a big height difference. So there's no way she shot her gun at this man and hit him where she hit him if she was standing up and if he was standing up. So she claims when she went into the apartment, he was standing on the back wall because it was like a straight apartment. So she claims he's on the back wall. She shot him. No, he was on the back wall. She came in and said, show me your hands, show me your hands. And he came towards her. So the apartment is 30 feet deep. She said she shot him between 13 and 15 feet, which means that he had came halfway through the apartment, and that she shot him, and she shot him where they're trained to shoot perpetrators. And so there is no way he would have fell where his body ended up if he was where she said. And there's no way that the trajectory of the bullet would have traveled the way it did if what she's saying is true. And then I was wondering, while she was on the phone with 911, which was another point of contention, did she do something to the body to try and maneuver the body to a position that would kind of like support the claim that she was giving, that he was actually standing straight up when she shot him? And so the 911 call, it was quite interesting because she claimed after she shot him, she turned the light on, she ran over, she never checked for a gun or anything. She knew he was still alive. Then she claimed that she did a few chest compressions, but we have text messages where during the time she claimed she was doing these chest compressions that, or she was rubbing his sternum, that she was actually texting the Martin Rivera guy. And so it was like, how were you administering CPR if you were also texting and you were also on the phone with the 911 operator? Like, how were you doing all three things at the same time? It would be virtually impossible. And so then we have people who are saying, we have several neighbors on the floor who said they went and looked out the peephole when they heard the gunshots, and that she was in the hallway pacing up and down in the hallway. So once again, when were you doing the CPR? And then we know when the police arrived, she was out on this railing because we had the video footage of her running out there and telling them, like directing them on where to come to. So just a lot of holes in her story. So yeah, guys, this video ended up being way longer than I thought. And so guys, I'm going to break this up into 2 videos because it is just too dang on long. And Yeah, that's it. So if you've been following the trial, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Have you ever went into the wrong apartment? Let me know your experiences going into the wrong apartment. Rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye bye.